Modern life can sometimes be so overwhelming that we all wish we could go back to simpler times. Let's go back 50 years to 1974. Whether you're young and curious about life then, or you grew up in the 70s and want to relive the past, I'm here to be your guide. Let's examine 20 examples of everyday life, culture, and conflicts 50 years ago and compare them to today. Number 1. Shop till you drop. I suppose grocery shopping hasn't changed much since the 1970s. You still went around the store aisles with a cart, loaded it with groceries, and checked out. There were fewer bells and whistles, like curbside pickup or self-checkout. And many groceries were locally owned. Because of that, you may have had a sense of community with the cashier instead of them being a means to get you your groceries. Also, you could have a full cart as pictured without it costing a mortgage. Number 2, a festival you can check out anytime, but you can never leave. Music festivals are still around, but they feel like less of a place of community and more of a stressful hassle. Plus, you never have legendary lineups like these anymore. Not to mention the price. $15 for the entire weekend. Adjusted for inflation, that's around $95.66. Imagine trying to go to a festival this large today for under $100. The tickets would get scalped on Ticketmaster and be resold for thousands. Number 3. Thousands of colors, thousands of dollars. While the price of many things has gone up, one thing has gotten drastically cheaper. Today, you can get a gigantic 4K TV for under $1,000. Back in 1974, these heavy box TVs cost $1,650. That is $10,522.45 in today's money. TVs were as much as a new car. But these were fancy color TVs. They were worth every penny. It's no wonder TV time was such a staple for families during this time. You had to get your money's worth. Number 4. An even bigger Mac. The golden arches were recognizable 50 years ago, as they are today. But McDonald's back then was arguably much better. Let's take the Big Mac. Adjusted for inflation, a 65-cent Big Mac is $4.15, which is cheaper than what it's going for today. The average price is $5.69. Not only was a Big Mac cheaper, but it was actually big. One of those things could feed a family and leave room for seconds. Now, it's a sad burger with an extra bun. Number 5. Sign of the Times Square. We all know Times Square as a crowded place full of bright digital billboards you want to stay away from. Back in 1974, it was still crowded, but it was walkable. Plus, it was a place you could go to for a movie and a casual trip to the museum. I'd love to see that Bruce Lee triple feature. Number 6. It's not easy being green. Back in the 1970s, avocado green was everywhere. Green appliances, green curtains, green floor. I'm getting green just thinking about it. Yet there is something quite inviting about this living room. I'd love to sit on the floral couch and read a book or two, provided the green colors don't distract me. Number 7. Waiting to get gas. This gas line looks like something out of Costco in a large city on a busy day, but this was everyday life for a while in the 1970s. 1973 brought an oil crisis due to political turmoil in the Middle East, leading to an oil embargo. In 1974, people were still feeling the effects. The poor guy in the picture can't even mow his lawn. One way the gas companies had it is the odd-even rule, where if your license plate ended with an odd number, you could get gas on certain days and different days for even-numbered. To think that nowadays, we think it's bad when gas prices go up a little. Number 8. Front of the bus. In 1974, Mary Wallace became the first woman to drive a Chicago Transit Authority (CTA) bus. Back then, a woman driving a bus was unheard of. To add to it, she was a black woman. Remember, this was not even 20 years after Rosa Parks and the Montgomery bus boycott. Despite some stares from men, she was a popular bus driver who kept the bus moving for 33 years until she retired. Number 9. Click-clack. Typing classes were popular for high school students during the 70s. Aspiring secretaries, journalists, and anyone else who needed a typewriter learned how to use the tool as efficiently as possible. Well, until the computer took over a few years later, at least. Luckily, a computer keyboard isn't that much different, but back then people thought it would be like this for a long time. It's crazy how technology changes and evolves. Number 10. All thumbs. Tom Thumb was the place to go to get groceries back in the 1970s. It's still around and mainly Texas-based, but this advertisement really takes you back to when they had the best prices and products around. I can still taste the food from the deli, always fresh and never sitting in a heater for too long. Number 11. A shocking career. Here is your typical employee working at Seattle City Light, an electric company of the 70s. Typing bills, answering calls, and looking great while doing it. Also, look at that glass ashtray. When you got angry calls from customers whose bills went up, you needed a smoke or two. Number 12. Going nuts for donuts. Entenmann's has been a New York staple since 1935 and still operates today. As you can see, there were much fewer hairnets back then. But the donuts were still so good. The lack of regulations just added to the flavor. Number 13. Jurassic Pic. Here are a bunch of students from New Jersey's Passaic High School during what appears to be a big game. They got pom-poms the size of your head, and some students are donning Native American makeup because their team is the Indians. To this day, the Indians are still a competing team. Number 14. Runnin' on Duncan Donuts, or just Duncan these days, is what America runs on. While not as big as it is now, it still had a presence in the 1970s. I love that logo with the words in a donut-shaped circle. Now, it's just the word Duncan. No creativity is allowed these days. Also, you know those donuts were fresh. Nowadays, you're lucky if the donuts are fresh, or if they even have what you want. Number 15. Life's a beach. It's 1974, and after a day at the beach, you want a cool treat. Or maybe your kids are still full of energy, and you need to take them to a play place. Luckily, Newport Beach has plenty of shops. I'd love to try Ken's frozen bananas with a Pepsi. The place feels less touristy, too. Sure, it's profiting from tourists, but there was more community and small businesses back then. Number 16. Triple the fun. Nowadays, cars have so many bells and whistles in them. But back in 1974, a car that had a convertible sunroof was all you needed. If you had one of these, you were cool. And this car is still the epitome of coolness in my book. And 5 people? Wow. You can bring your whole crowd with you. Number 17. D.C. 1974 AD. Have you ever driven around Washington, D.C. recently? It's so crammed with cars that going just a few miles is a day trip. 50 years ago, you could drive around with ease. Also, depending on when this photo was taken, the president was either Richard Nixon or Gerald Ford. Nixon resigned in August 1974 due to the Watergate scandal. Remember when that was the most scandalous thing a president has ever done? Number 18. Read the Room. The Reading Terminal Market is an indoor market in Philadelphia, and here's a shot of its waiting room in 1974. Just like how it is now, people hated to wait. Just look at the two in the front. Someone they love is shopping until they drop in there while they wait outside. And look at those phone booths lined up all in a row. Can you even hear your conversation with all that crosstalk? I don't know how thick those booth walls are. Number 19. Diner and a Show. I don't know who Peggy Wright was, but I bet she gave exceptional service. She would be there to refill your cup at all times, give you the papers, and call you honey. Then, she served you some of the best food you ever had. These local diners still exist, but are seen as more of a novelty, and their sense of community is gone. If you ever see one, though, get yourself some hash browns or a burger. You won't regret it. Number 20. I Cant Drive 55. Nowadays, going down an interstate at 55 miles an hour is something you do during a traffic jam, bad weather, or if there's something wrong with your car. But in 1974, the National Maximum Speed Law made it so that the maximum speed limit nationwide was 55. This was, of course, in response to the gas shortage. In some states, the speed limit was a suggestion, not a rule. In other places, the government budget grew bigger from all those speeding tickets. Even as the gas problem improved, The law was still kept because it was claimed it helped to reduce traffic fatalities. But in 1987, the limit was increased to 65 miles per hour. In 1995, the law was finally repealed, and now 70 is the suggestion, not the rule.